Alright, welcome back everybody. A little something special this time around on the channel. Me and some friends headed down to Indiana to the Rockrun event put on by the IXCR. Had heard about these events and watched some videos. They look really cool. So decided to go down and check it out. This is my first time here. One of my buddies that I'm with had been down and raced these before, and he had some friends down here in Indiana, so we all hung out together at the track. I got them, and they're all kind of surrounding me here on the line. So this is the 40 plus class that I'm in. That's my buddy Jesse there right in front of me on the Honda, about to take off in his class. So this is a Hare Scramble. This is the morning session of the event. Pretty cool format that they've got here. They do a morning session, which is 90 minutes plus one lap, and then an afternoon session, which is 2 hours plus one lap. I didn't get a real good start here. The bike wouldn't start right away. A little disappointed. It'd been doing pretty good on hot starts lately, but go figure. When I needed it to, it wasn't there. So you'll see here in a second. I got behind a little bit on the start. So had some ground to make up. We had 28 guys in my class at this event. This morning session had 297 riders in it, so great turnout. Yeah, somebody there wasn't looking so good. Not sure. I never did hear what might have happened to that guy. Hopefully he's alright. So big turnout at this event, which from what I understand is pretty typical. They seem to do things a little different down in Indiana. Go figure, those Hoosiers. They run these events outside the AMA, so they've got their own organizations that put these on. The IXCR is one of them. I think they're probably the biggest one, but I heard there's also at least a couple other ones that put on similar types of events, enduros. This is the first hill climb here. It's real steep. They call them pro hills here for whatever reason. There were 2 hills on this course that they called pro hills, but there was actually another climb that I'll point out later in the video that I think was the hardest one that I never heard anybody referring to as a pro climb, but if these other 2 were, that one certainly was. The soil here, it's all clay, and pretty hard. Really not many soft areas at all, except for the mud that you'll see. I didn't really have the tire set up for that. I was running my Southwick 2s, which no issues at all with the back tire. Man, that back tire just sticks to anything, and it worked great all weekend. But the front tire is not best suited for this type of terrain. I ended up losing the front end a few times during this race. The last couple I don't think are on on video. It happened after the battery died, but the last one I sprained my thumb pretty good. So definitely won't be running that tire again in the future Indiana events. I'm actually planning on going down to, they've got their last event down there is next weekend, so 2 weeks, be 2 weeks following this event. I don't think they normally run this late in the year. This will be, after the middle of November at this last event. I think it got rescheduled that late in the year just because of all the virus stuff this year. But it works out great for me. Extends the season a little bit. All the racing's done up here in Michigan. And the nice thing about these events being managed by their own organization, they lease or rent the property from various farmers down here, I think is how it all works out. And so you don't need to worry about guys out hunting and stuff, because this is getting into the time of year when rifle season starts up, and you've always got to be conscious of that. Here in Michigan, they shut the trails down essentially. They allow you like a 2-hour window where you could go out and ride, but I don't know anybody that bothers with it. Once that gun season opens up, they shut the trails down. But down here, when you're on this private land, it's go for it. assume that that farmer's not letting other people out there hunting. If they are, they're not going to get much. We came down on Friday. The way they run these events, they do on Saturday. They do the ATVs and the side-by-sides. So they run ATVs all day, and then the last race of the day on Saturday is all the side-by-sides, and that was pretty cool to watch. I'd never been to a big cross-country type event like this, where they had the quads and side-by-sides. So it was my first time seeing those things race, and it was pretty cool. Watching those quads flying through the woods, and most of the trail is shared with the quads. Watching those guys fly through some of these tight areas was pretty cool. And then the side-by-sides, a good chunk of the course is actually shared with side-by-sides too, and I couldn't believe some of the spots that these side-by-sides were running through, and those guys are just insane. I mean, they're just flying through the woods, and they're bouncing off trees, they're bouncing off each other, and they're rolling these things over and just flipping them back on their wheels and taking off. It was really something to see. It was pretty cool. I was never had much interest in side-by-sides, but I guess if I ever wanted to drop 30-40 grand on another hobby, I'd think about getting into that. So the course here was awesome. Really enjoyed it. It had a nice variety of single track, the kind of stuff you're seeing here, and then in areas where it opened up a little bit. We were kind of crossing farmer fields on occasion, so there were some open high-speed areas. One section coming up where we go through a creek bed that was really cool. I had never really ridden through stuff like that before. Up here in Michigan, due to the environmental laws, at any of the races that we do up here, they're not allowed to let you run through any sort of waterway. So they put bridge crossings up over that stuff. but down here in Indiana, I'm not sure if it has anything to do with it being on the private land, or if it was. I wouldn't think that was it. It must have something, probably more likely something to do with the environmental laws. But they let you run through the waterways down here. It was pretty cool. You'll see it. It's not too much further into the video. Felt really good coming into the day. If you remember, my last Hare Scramble didn't go so well. I managed to get one lap in the books and call it a day. You know, that was in the back of my mind coming into this race, and I definitely didn't want to have a similar result here. So I paced myself pretty much right from the start. Knew that it was going to be a long race, and wasn't really at all concerned about where I finished. Just really wanted to finish. So that was pretty much my mentality for the whole event. Pick good lines, which got important in some of these mud sections that you'll see, and just try to not let my arms get too tired out. There's one of those field sections that I was talking about. You could really get flying through some of those. I was probably hitting, 60-ish miles an hour, I guess, through there. I think this will be coming down into the creek section. So we were in row 8. So by the time we got to this, there had already been 7 rows of guys through here. I don't know, probably around 100 guys, I guess, would have gone through here by the time we got to it. So everybody's sort of getting the lay of the land here. I think that was my buddy Jesse there that I just passed. I just noticed that for the first time. And there's my buddy Brock right in front of me with the rainbow colored apparel on. So this area right here, I got through here decent this time, but this just kept getting worse and worse with each lap. So there were the last couple laps through there took a little bit longer to get through as all those ruts got deeper and more roots got exposed. So the rule here with the IXCR is stay within 25 yards of the arrows of the course, the plotted course. I think I certainly could have taken more advantage of that. I think that's pretty generous. Looking back on it, I certainly could have taken more advantage of that. To get around some sections or some riders that were in the way. I certainly saw, there's Brock again. I certainly saw some people going outside of that 25-yard rule. And there goes Brock. I didn't realize that him and I were so close to one another through this first lap. Pulling a tear off there. Had no problem with any of these climbs at all for the entire race. That, again, that Southwick 2 tire is just awesome. And it's, you know, it's not necessarily intended for this terrain, but it sure did the job. And there was the first one where I lost that front end. Just a real shallow rut there from the quads going through, and man, just would get caught up on a little bit of a lip, and that's all it took with this front tire on this harder terrain. So I've already got a brand new Millville. I'm gonna throw on the front for next week's event. I'll leave the Southwick 2 on the back, and we'll see how that Millville does, which is designed for a little bit harder terrain, intermediate terrain, harder than the Southwick is designed for. Pretty impressed with this Yamaha's ability to lug up those climbs. You see quite a bit of that in this video, and throughout the course of this event. There was, you know, a lot of low RPM hill climb, and I didn't want to lose traction on this harder clay, so I was kind of lugging it up these hills, and it had no problem with it at all. Kind of picked a bad line there. I was kind of staying on course, and these guys were cutting that corner. ended up seeing a lot of guys, stopped on the side at this event, taking a breather. I'm sure, some of them probably went down, before taking a little break, but I think a lot of these guys were getting tired. Yeah, this guy's kind of holding me up here for a while. I wasn't too upset about it. I was, again, I was kind of trying to maintain my pace. I didn't want to push too hard and wear myself out, so I was okay with, hanging behind him for a little while. But then it got, I think right around here is where I finally get around him. So this section is pretty nasty. These ruts ended up getting super deep by the end of the race. This is coming into the other pro hill that they call it. And there were two lines here, one to the left, one to the right. We had scoped this out the day before during the ATV race and the side-by-side race, and the line to the right just seemed a little more consistent, so I went up that side every time. They had a bypass for the hill climbs, at least the first one and this third one. I forgot to really mention that second one when I was going through it. I'll say something about it on the next lap, but they had bypasses on the first one and the last one. There was not a bypass on that middle one, on the second one. And there were a lot of guys having trouble with that second one. That's the one that I think was probably the hardest climb of the course. Every time I went through there were guys, stuck on the hill, or a bunch of guys sitting down at the bottom trying to decide which way they wanted to try to get up it. And it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There were no spectators at that one to help pull the bike up or anything, so I think some guys probably got stuck there for a while. You can see some of the camping areas there, the pit area. It was just a huge, I think it's a soybean field, just huge farm field that had a bunch of branches off of it. There goes Brock. I knew he was behind me, and he's usually a little faster than me, so I let him go. Took a bad line through there. We'll see Brock again in a little while. This area right here on the right, where that water was, the day before during the side-by-side race, two side-by-sides ended up down in that water, and dug themselves in there pretty good. They were a few feet in the water. They had to have another side-by-side up on the hill with a winch come pull them out of there so that they could get back into their race. They ended up being in there for quite a while, though. I'm sure it messed up their result. Around the pit area. Again, huge event, so I mean, just tons of people here. I don't know what the official count might have been, but I mean, there were several hundred campers, campsites set up, so it's a big event. They definitely know how to throw one of these races. The Saturday night after the side-by-side race, they have a huge bonfire, and they had some entertainment, some guy up there playing music, and everybody's hanging out by the fire and enjoying some cocktails. It was a great time. Unfortunately, of course, that's Saturday night before the Sunday when all the motorcycle races are, so I didn't partake in too many cocktails on Saturday night. I actually got to bed pretty early. And here we're coming up to the timing station here. Single file, no passing. This little tent here is where their timing equipment is. That little kid surprised me. I didn't hear him coming, and next thing I know, I got some kid flying by me at about 20 miles an hour faster than I was going. Right there is where we entered the woods from the starting line. So right there was the one lap. So this is coming up to that first hill climb. Bypass was over to the right. We checked it out the day before, and the bypass looked to be just as tricky as doing the climb. So I adapted for the climb every time. When you're running a course, kind of any kind of race course, I think, at least it's the way it is for me. Certain points of the course kind of remind you of certain things, or get a certain thing going through your head. And this area right here, every time I came through here, I'm not sure what made me think of it, but my buddy Chad, who normally does these races with us, he was out west hunting during the time of this race, so he wasn't with us. So every time I was going through that section back there, I said, well, I know at least I'll beat Chad today. So maybe not quite fair to Chad, but something about it must have made me feel a little better, because I thought about it every lap when I went through that section. So there you go, Chad. I beat you at Rockrun. And I'll probably never let you live it down.
Woo. Hands are getting tired.
Yeah, so his hands and not too bad on the forearms, but hands are getting a little tired there, so sort of loosened up my grip and, started again pacing myself a little more. Definitely, didn't want to burn myself out. I'm only, a little over a lap in. Figured from what I saw of the lap times during the previous events at this course, I figured we were going to end up with around 4 or 5 laps. So that's kind of what I was setting myself up for. That's speedo there said 56, but it's a GPS one, so it kind of lags behind a little bit. I was probably just over 60 in that section. That little turn there, coming into this kind of ravine, it was a little tricky because it was pretty tight. I saw in somebody else had put up a video of somebody coming down that hill, like in front of them, kind of cutting the course a little bit, and they came down down that hill sideways, into the bottom, and then just high-sided right over into the hill on the other side. They had way too much steam coming down there.
Go ahead.
I got somebody behind me. I was trying to let him by. I think they end up going through right here. Clutching it quite a bit. There's a lot of clutch work at this race. see on some of these side hill sections there, I think every lap there'd be somebody down there towards the bottom that obviously slid down further than they had planned on. This event is located just west-southwest of Indianapolis. It seems like a lot of the events are not far from this area. They're and all the terrain seems pretty similar around here, which is nice. There's a lot more elevation change than we get up here in Michigan. Michigan's pretty flat, even though, of course this is nothing like being out in the mountains or anything, but it's a lot more than we usually see here in Michigan. Not far, the GNCC, the Ironman GNCC was just the weekend before this, not far from here. And the terrain for that event was very similar. So here we're entering that creek bed again. And here's where you'll see Brock again. He's right there, stuck in that huge rut. And that's pretty much where Brock spends the rest of his race. He has trouble getting out of there, and eventually decides to just hang out there and help people get unstuck. Just because that's the sort of nice guy he is. Yeah, so this is coming up to that second hill that I've been talking about. And one of the things I think that made it trickier, this mud section through here this mud was just nasty. You see there's kind of several crossings through the mud here, and then you go right from that mud to this climb that you'll see here. And the climb, it wasn't a straight climb, it's kind of a sweeping left-hander up the hill. And this is where But you'll see there's a bunch of guys here. I mean, every time I came through here, there were guys having trouble with this, and as you can see, my lines certainly weren't ideal, but I managed to just lug this thing up there every time. And I took a similar line every time over those tree roots there on the very right side. Some girls are holding out a sign that I waved to. No idea what the sign said. I'm sure it was something like, "You're doing awesome." This is that section. These ruts just start getting ridiculous. I have no idea what that kid was saying. bike was making a weird noise there. Not quite sure if that was just the brakes getting hot after slowing down after that field section or what, but I think that was the only time I noticed it. This will be right about where I lost the battery. So awesome time at this event. Definitely going back down to do some more of these IXCR events. I ended up 10th in my class. Finished out of the 28 people. The first place guy in our class did 5 laps. I managed to do 4. Some pictures here from Stacy Mundy. So awesome time. Definitely gonna do everything I can to make it to more of these IXCR events. Had awesome time down there. The whole weekend was a blast. If you're in the anywhere nearby in the Midwest, and take a look at their schedule and try and get over to one of these. I promise you won't regret it. Thanks for checking out the video, and we'll see you on the trails.